For those who don't know me, my name is Josh Sylvester. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations. Thank you for joining yet another series of our Corsair chats. We have the pleasure of an amazing speaker today and close personal friend, Shaelyn Floria. And before I pass it off to her and give her a brief introduction, I just want to let everyone know that if you do have a question, you don't have to wait until the end of the presentation. On the top or bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A button. You're more than welcome to punch those questions in whenever they come in your head. And then at the end of Shaelyn's presentation, we will get to as many questions as we can. With that said, Shaelyn Floria is a 2014 Bachelor's of Spanish graduate from Bridgewater State. I always told her I wouldn't give Bridgewater State love, but it's a great school, so I will. And then she got her act together and got her master's from UMass Dartmouth in 2019 in teaching. She currently is the chair of the Spanish department at Douglas High School, and we are very excited to have her, and I thank her very much for doing this for me. Shay, I will pass it over to you.
All right, thank you. So just bear with me for a second while I share the screen. I'm on a new computer, and it might just take me a second.
Zoom dynamics.
Okay. Can you see? All right.
Yeah, I see the presentation right now.
Do you see the presentation? I'm just going to do what I did last time and stop sharing and then select the full screen option.
Perfect.
And then, all right. Can you see my
You're off and
PowerPoint?
rolling. Looks great.
All right, perfect. Then I will get started. Okay. So thank you for having me today. I'm going to share some tips and really just recommendations for learning a second language. And before I get started, Josh kind of already introduced me, but my name is Shaelyn. I am 28 years old. I've been teaching Spanish for the last 7 years, and I currently work at Douglas High School, where I am the foreign language department chair. And I got my bachelor's from Bridgewater in Spanish and then moved on to UMass Dartmouth for my master's in teaching. So before I get started with my tips, I just want to kind of give you a little bit of background information on something called language acquisition. When I was in college, I actually took a lot of classes on linguistics. And we talked a lot about this man named Stephen Krashen, who is an expert in the field of linguistics. And he has all these theories about how to learn and acquire a second language. And basically what he says is that learning a language is less important than actually acquiring the language. And basically the difference between the two is that learning a language is referring to like learning about a second language, whereas acquiring language acquisition is about like absorbing it and, absorbing that language without actually thinking about it explicitly, and like thinking about all the rules and everything involved. So in order for language acquisition to take place, you need to have something called comprehensible input. And basically all that means input is just, the language that's being presented to you in a way that you can acquire it naturally, even if you can't understand like everything that you're hearing and all the words and structures within it. And this next slide kind of explains that a little better than I just did. Language learning versus language acquisition. So as you can see, acquisition is something that is acquired naturally, and you acquire it by using it in practice. It's inductive, and it's kind of how you are, discovering that language on your own while you're practicing it. Versus learning a language where it's really just, you're learning about the language, and you're learning the knowledge about it, and it's very like rule driven, which is kind of how a lot of people learn it in high school. So, with that in mind, my first recommendation for someone who's trying to acquire a second language is to just listen to it, basically. A lot of studies have shown that just listening to a language can help you learn it, even if you don't actually, you're not understanding what you're hearing. You should just sit down and listen and just take it all in without like trying to do any translating. So if you think about it, this is kind of true for everyone when you're actually with everyone in their native language. Like when you're a baby and you're born, you don't actually start speaking or producing any words until, you're at least a year old. So that whole year you're just sitting and taking in and listening to things before you're actually producing it. And the same thing is true when you are trying to acquire a second language. So I recommend finding sources of constant passive linguistic input, and some of the things you can use for that are, podcasts, listen to music in another language, and then TV shows are actually super helpful, particularly in Spanish. They say telenovelas are really good, which are just Spanish soap operas. Those are a really good source for, practicing your listening. Next step, when you finally do start producing the language, you really want to focus on content and things that are relevant to you. So this is why I think a lot of people have trouble learning the language when they're in high school, because not everything that the teacher has to go over in the curriculum is going to be important and relevant to you. If they're teaching a unit on farm animals, then that's probably not something that you're going to use very often in your life. So that may not be something that is easy for you to remember. So you really want to, focus on content and pick things that are going to help you and that you want to learn about. And then once you do find that content, don't focus on the grammar and picking the right verb and conjugating it correctly. Like, you really just want to focus on getting the message across in a way that, the person you're speaking to will understand. And the more you do that, and the more you practice the communication and with the content you're speaking, then the corrections will come on their own. So don't be afraid to, like I said, say the wrong vocab word or conjugate the verb incorrectly, because when you're speaking to someone who knows that language, they're not going to be listening for corrections. They're going to be listening to try and understand what you're saying to them. So focus on the content and the corrections will come. So these are just some techniques that I found that are helpful to people when they're trying to remember like vocab. So one is to remember words by associating them with places. And really all that means is, for example, if the place you want to focus on is your house, then maybe that day you will learn all the vocab related to the house. Like, you'll learn how to say all the rooms in the house. So then the house becomes that place. And then learning vocab in batches of similar sounds rather than similar meanings is going to actually be helpful, even though it may not make sense to you to do it that way. For example, obviously, the first place you want to start is with cognates, because cognates are words that sound and look similar in both languages. So if you, for example, don't know any Spanish at all and you hear the word teléfono, then you can probably associate that sounds like the word telephone, so it probably means telephone. And then same thing goes with like phonetic spelling in words. So for example, the word llega and llave, both of those words start with a double L. So in Spanish, double L's actually make a Y sound. So you can associate those two words with the way that they sound, even though they don't really mean the same thing. So llega means arrive, llave means key. Once you remember that phonetic sound association, you can probably then make another word association and say, okay, once I arrive, llega, I need to use my key, llave, and that might help you remember the vocabulary. Okay, the affective filter, this is actually super important, and it kind of relates back to the previous slide where I was talking about not worrying about making mistakes. So obviously, the more motivated you are to learn the language, the easier it's going to come. If you're someone who is highly motivated, if you're super confident and really passionate about learning a second language, and you have a very low level of anxiety about it, then you're going to be able to acquire that language a lot faster than someone who, for example, isn't really doesn't have that self-motivation. They have low self-esteem. They're anxious about, making all those mistakes. Those people are actually going to have a high affective filter. And basically what that means is the affective filter is going to create a mental block, and it's actually going to prevent you from being able to acquire what you're studying. So you want to make sure your affective filter is very low. So you want to, be in an environment where you're comfortable learning the language and you're, communicating with people who you don't feel judged. Because if that affective filter is high, again, you're not actually going to be learning anything. It would be similar to, reading a page in a book where, you read the whole page, but you actually have no idea what you just read because you weren't really processing it. And then finally, obviously, the best recommendation I can have for you would be to immerse yourself in that culture and in that language. I understand right now traveling isn't really an option, and there are other ways and solutions to do that. But traveling and immersing yourself is going to be the best way to acquire that language the fastest. I was fortunate enough to study abroad in college. So I lived in Spain for 6 months when I was in college, and I was living with a host family where, the only language they spoke was Spanish. I was taking all of my classes by professors who only spoke Spanish. When you are there, you are forced to use that language. They don't know your language. So it is the best way to keep practicing, because you have to find a way to get your message across. And like I said, if you're not in the situation where you can travel, which all of us are right now, there are other things that you can do. For me, obviously, I use it every day with my job, but I also have a Spanish keyboard on my cell phone, so that I actually text friends that I met in college that I also majored in Spanish, and we only text in Spanish. So you could, seek out people who know the language and propose a no English rule, where you only can communicate in the language. Or there are actually a lot of apps and things like that where you can seek out native speakers who will be more than willing to talk to you, because they want to learn English just as much as you want to learn their language. So my next slide actually has some recommendations for resources that I found that were highly recommended for learning another language. So the first two, italki and Tandem, these apps actually allow you to connect with native speakers from around the world. So italki has over, I think it said 10,000 different professors who, are native speakers in different languages. And it actually has customized learning where you can choose, a topic and a goal that's important to you, and then it'll find one of those professors on that app that is can teach you a lesson on something that you want, and then you can just, connect with them. And this app isn't free, but you can pay by lesson. So if you only want to use it for a couple of lessons, then you can pay per lesson, which is kind of cool. And then Tandem is very similar. LinkU is actually super cool because it has all these resources on it, like podcasts and things like that. And you can pick what you want to use, obviously, and then you can create links over like words that you want to learn from those um, videos and things. And then you can use those later to create like quizzes and flashcards for yourself. And this app also actually lets you upload content from other sources, like you could upload a show from Netflix, for example, that's in Spanish, and you could use that show and create the links over the words from that show. And this app is actually free. So that's pretty cool. And then the last two, Modly and BusU. These, again, these are apps that have a ton of mini lessons that were actually created by expert linguists. And these lessons will help you focus more on like phrases versus, individual vocab words. There are listening opportunities where you can listen to native speakers and then actually practice real conversations with them. And both of these apps were actually voted App of the Year and were Editor's Choice on Google. So they're all, highly recommended. And there's a ton more. These are just a few that I picked that I thought would be the most useful. So just to sum that all up, because it was a lot of information, my top recommendations for you to acquire a second language would be to, one, just listen. Pick something you're interested in, whether it's a podcast you want to play on your drive to work, a show that you want to watch on Netflix, music you want to listen to, and just listen. Don't focus on, translating it or understanding the message. Just listen to it for a while. And then once you do finally decide to start, trying to learn that language, don't focus on the mistakes, because again, you want to have a low affective filter if you want to be successful in actually acquiring that language. Focus on the content and getting your message across, and the rest will come. And then finally, obviously, you want to make sure you're using it. The saying use it or lose it is so true with a foreign language. So you want to make sure that you're practicing, and especially I recommend seeking out native speakers on these apps. Get a pen pal, because, we're unable to travel right now, but practice makes perfect. So highly recommend that. And then those are my recommendations. Obviously, everyone learns differently. For example, I learned Spanish just from school. That worked for me. I liked learning the structures and the grammar that go along with the vocab. I was very interested in it, so I was very highly motivated to learn it. But again, everyone is different, and if you are just trying to acquire that language, starting fresh, then these would be my recommendations for you. So that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, preguntas, obviously you can feel free to ask me. And I did want to say, Josh, if you want to share this PowerPoint after, I have the images for these resources linked. So if you just click on the picture, it'll take you to the link. And that's it.
Very well done. I think we see your picture. Do you have a stop video? I don't know if it threw it off for you.
Wait, did you not see my PowerPoint?
Well, that would be terrible. I'd stop you before that. Just your face. Your face is your frozen picture.
Oh.
That's okay. You got to see the cat.
Here I am.
And we're back. Cool. That's great. Amazing job.
Thank you.
I didn't know it was going to be a psychology that I have a very high affective filter in a lot of things in life. So I guess I'll definitely work on that. That was amazing. That was great resources. Thank you for doing that. We just have a few questions. The first question is, where are some places you've traveled? And what are some memorable moments you could share?
Um, well, I've actually been really fortunate to travel to a lot of Spanish speaking countries. Like I said, I studied abroad in Granada, Spain, which is in the south, Andalusia, when I was in college, and that was amazing. And um, just like it's so different. I come from like a small town, and I was like living in a city where it was normal to walk 45 minutes to class every day. And, um, I would like go to this cafe pretty regularly for like coffee. And um, the owners like, started to notice me. And then I would have like conversations with them in Spanish, which was super helpful. They knew like people are so nice and they're so patient if they know that you're trying to learn and like you're willing to learn. So they'll definitely like have a conversation with you. Um, so that was cool. And then once you're actually over there in the country, it's a lot cheaper to travel, like when I was in Europe to travel within Europe. So I went to Paris just for a weekend because I always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. I went to Rome, and then I went to Dublin, Ireland, which was really cool. And then being a Spanish teacher, I actually at Douglas High School have taken students on a couple of trips over the past summer. So 2 summers ago, we went to Costa Rica for 10 days, which was awesome. We traveled all throughout Costa Rica. We went zip lining. Um, we're supposed to go whitewater rafting, but there was actually a landslide while we were there, so we did not do that. um, but I like saw monkeys like up close on the beach, and um, went to a coffee plantation, and it was just that was amazing. And then last summer, I took the students to Barcelona and Madrid for a week, and I am in the process of planning a trip to Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands for this upcoming summer, which hopefully happens with COVID. But yeah, so that's where I've been.
Like a group of students going to something that they probably never experienced before, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's such a good experience for them too. Um, Obviously, a lot of them had a high affective filter, and they were scared to use the language, but um, we had like a tour guide who would give us tasks and break us into groups with the kids with their chaperones, and we had to like go ask natives from the country like questions, like trivia questions, to get answers that you wouldn't be able to Google, and it was fun.
What are some shows or your favorite show? Well, I guess maybe not your favorite show because I unfortunately know that's The Office, but in the context of this presentation, what would you recommend to help continue to increase the learning process?
Well, there's a lot of shows that Netflix offers. I know, like, for Spanish anyway. So I mean, one that I enjoy was Jane the Virgin. That is actually a modern telenovela. It's a soap opera, but it's more modern. And the grandmother speaks strictly Spanish in that show, so it isn't all in Spanish, but there is Spanish aspect to it. And then I have heard good things about Elite on Netflix. That's more it's like a thriller, like teen drama. Um, and then I've also heard good things about Money Heist, which is also like it's like a crime drama show, and it's all in Spanish. So
Um, that's Brittany's favorite show, Money Heist.
what is Money? Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so what languages are easy to learn once you tackle Spanish? once you start doing that, are there languages that follow a similar structure in some way?
Yeah, definitely. English is definitely the hardest language to learn because there really isn't like a structure to it. And like I can understand that now that I teach Spanish. But really, any of the Romance languages are super similar. Like I took 2 years of Italian when I went to college, and that was pretty easy for me to learn since I knew Spanish. Portuguese is very similar. A lot of the words are like they're cognates. They look like Spanish words, but they're just pronounced differently. So Portuguese and Italian are definitely up there. Um, French is considered a Romance language, but I don't know French, but by looking at it, it seems a little more difficult. But I think if you know a language, then you'd be able to pick that up pretty easily.
For doing this, and I know that we were planning on doing it a little bit later, and you start school on Monday, so best of luck with that. Dave,
Thank you.
summer's over, so that's fun in a new world, new way of teaching. But thank you again for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope that was helpful.
It was very helpful. Absolutely. I got to work on some things and find my cognates because I actually know more Spanish than I think I do just by using notebooks. So great. Awesome. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll make sure we get these resources with some links from Shay's presentation. And thank you again, and stay safe, everyone.